The game is fixed.
Just here for the DLC, you can skip to that part using the YouTube chapters feature. This next part was recorded before the release of the DLC. I have lots of complaints about stealth, but I made a build focusing on sneaking around, turning invisible, throwing knives, and executing dudes with a revolver. And it feels like Watch Dogs mixed with Deus Ex, and that's not even on a build focused on hacking. Still plenty to bitch about though, and with the DLC apparently completely replacing parts of the gameplay and skill trees, I want to explain what my problems are now before the DLC is out. That way we can look and see how Phantom Liberty deals with those problems. So that means it's time to stick some iron in our mouths and first of all, why does sliding look like this? It's slow, it's ugly, it completely locks your move into one direction, and it just feels horrible in general. On the topic of animations, my build is heavily focused on stealth, and I do a lot of what the kids call chiropractic malpractice, and I would like to know why everything looks this bad. I pull out a gun and this badass animation plays, but then I do a stealth takedown, something a stealth player will do hundreds of times a playthrough, and this is what it looks like? Worse than that, there's a skill that lets you drag bodies immediately from a takedown, and this is how the animations link together. Are you fucking serious? There's 2 lethal takedown animations. It's not like you had a bunch to account for. And that's completely ignoring the obvious problem. 90% of my DPS involves throwing knives at people, but I can't use them to stealth kill people? Knives are the coolest stealth kill weapon in every game. And the idea of putting my knife away in order for my skinny ass female character to snap giant dudes' necks is kinda dumb. My strength stat is 3. Same with the air takedowns. Look at this. This costs a skill point to be able to do. Even in the skill menu, the pre-recorded animation shows the character completely teleporting to make the animations line up. Assassin's Creed had better animations in 2007, and if it has to be a head slam, there's still much better examples of what this can look like. With Phantom Liberty having a focus on spy stuff, hopefully we can get some more stabby animations. They could even be added to the skill tree. Picture a ninjutsu skill, take down enemies faster from stealth by using a knife. Gun Fu perk with gun takedowns? Speaking of the skill tree, one of the biggest issues Cyberpunk has is its reliance on tiny and irrelevant stat boosts that only exist to pad out leveling. For example, this is my baseline recoil with my pistol, and this is after a 20% recoil reduction perk that only works on pistols. I think it got worse. In my experience, the best skill systems in games are defined by changing the way you play the game. At its weakest, this is something like adding new functionality. Far Cry 3 lets you pull the pin on an enemy's grenade. Previously, you wouldn't do that because you couldn't. But at its best, it changes how fundamental systems work. Let me give you an example. Payday 2 gives you a set of downs. When you're down, you can be revived, but once you run out, you go into police custody. There are skills you can get to avoid using these downs. Messiah allows you to get up without consuming a down after you kill an enemy one time. Okay, now remember that and put it to the side. Payday 2 has 2 primary tools for healing: medic bags and first aid kits. Medic bags are placed slowly in one location and can be used 3 times. Alternatively, you can use first aid kits. You get more of them and they place faster, but they can't be used multiple times, so they're easier to use but provide less value. If you get the uppers perk, you can place 9 first aid kits instead of 2. This is kind of insane at first glance, but here's what I didn't mention earlier. Messiah gets recharged when you use a doctor bag if you upgrade it. Meaning, if you get downed, kill an enemy and get back up, then use a doctor bag, the only cost was 1 use of that bag. If you stack this with Combat Doctor, you can get another bag and more uses of it. This turns a decent healing item into a free life dispensary. And with a more passive healing method like the perk deck Ex-President, I don't use doctor bags for healing ever. They are purely for refills on Messiah. By the end, after we combine certain skills, the mechanics have completely changed, and the way I interact with the systems is completely different from the starting point. Compare that system to Cyberpunk. Soft on your feet, reduce fall damage by 5% to a maximum of 20. Hail of bullets, shotgun and LMGs deal 3% more damage to a max of 10%. That's 3 skill points, by the way. Bigger booms boost grenade damage by 5% up to 25% after you invest 5 skill points. That's not to say all the perks are like this. Some fit my criteria from Payday. Dagger Dealer allows you to throw knives, and without the cool points required, that feature and playstyle just aren't available. Fitting with that is Juggler, which sends your knives back to you when you kill an enemy or land a crit. And to go back to combining skills, Speed Demon allows for more damage the faster you move. Combine this with Multitasker and you can shoot while sprinting, increasing the effect. Like I said earlier, CDPR is confirmed to be reworking the skills in the game, and that's probably the change I have the most faith in going into the DLC. Oh, and I think it's really cool you can respec your character, but without the ability to respec attribute points, you're still stuck with the same playstyle. I'm all for games that require multiple playthroughs to build different characters, but when the game has this many forced slow walk-talking sections, I'm not going to make a new character and play the 3-hour tutorial again just to see if I even like the playstyle I'm trying. There's a mod that lets you refund these points whenever you want, and I do recommend it. But it would be cool to see it officially implemented. Okay, next part, the driving. I don't think I need to elaborate a ton here, but cars are stiff and slippery all at the same time.
Pause.
Driving in this game is visually impressive a lot of the time, but it can be miserable to play. We're not asking for Forza, but damn guys, 4x4 Evolution on the GameCube is better than this. And on a similar note, how are the cops still incapable of driving? If it was on par with GTA 3, I could accept it, but if you shoot someone in traffic, the game will literally just spawn a cop next to you. Okay, rapid fire round. Make dodge a separate keybind. Why do I need to double tap? In a game this focused on leveling up tiered colored gear, first of all, cringe. And second of all, why in the tap dancing shit serpent can't I sort by damage? DPS is a useful stat in some situations, but when I'm trying to figure out what gun one-shots the best, DPS doesn't really do much for me. Why is it so easy to spam healing items? They had a perfect fix in The Witcher 3 with the toxicity system. There's even a mod that re-implements it. Even without that though, a cooldown or longer animations would go a long way. Or limit the supply. I've never purchased any heals and I have dozens on me despite spamming them all the time and playing on the hardest difficulty. But here we are, the end of the road, which means... Okay, first off, holy shit. This skill tree. They did everything I could have asked for and more. For the most part, the structure of the abilities has completely changed. Huge chunks of abilities are unlocked after passing certain stat thresholds. Everything above this line requires Tech Ability 9, and everything above this requires Tech Ability 15. I find this significantly more readable than the web of the old skill tree. There are also paths that focus on the acquisition of one main powerful ability, and then a series of smaller skills meant to enhance the main one. For example, Deadeye 1 and 2 are fairly lackluster, but once 3 points are invested, a buff called Deadeye boosts headshots to 25%, and it eliminates bullet spread. The long shot perk completely eliminates damage drop off during Deadeye, allowing for devastating headshots at any range. The only issue with that is that hitting a long range shot with a pistol in this game can be kinda tough. With High Noon, you can reload in slow motion after finishing an enemy with a Deadeye headshot. These abilities together obviously lead the player down a specific playstyle, and someone who aims center mass will get nothing out of these abilities. Changing the way you play, perhaps? Another example. Overclock allows you to trade health for more RAM used in quick hacks. This means you can go ham, provided your body can take it. Race Against Mine increases hack damage as health goes down, meaning you're encouraged to drain your own health with hacks to make them more powerful. To help offset the damage, Sublimation provides health for any ability that helps you recover RAM. Here's one of my favorites, Finisher Blade Runner. Yes, this DLC also adds finishers, we'll get to that. Blade Runner allows you to trigger a finisher when an enemy is low on health, which provides you with health. Going the distance doubles the range you can activate the finisher, which helps turn Cyberpunk into Katana Doom 2016, which I think we all needed, even if we didn't know it. While we're on katanas, the possibilities for movement and fighting against ranged enemies with melee weapons has been greatly expanded. Swords can be used to block and deflect bullets at the cost of stamina, and like I said, finishers can be used to close gaps while providing healing. Get yourself a Sandy and you can Katana Zero all over Night City. I didn't really cover melee in the first half of the video, and that's because it's boring as hell and I didn't really want to play in the state that it was in. Remember when I complained that dodging was annoying to trigger? Well, now you can turn it off in the menu, and instead use dashing, which is activated with a separate keybind. It can be upgraded to be used in the air and given certain boosts like the perk Mad Dash, which allows for double the dash distance when you use it toward an enemy. This can be used for very fast movement around the map and pairs well with finishers, allowing you to be extremely violent and extremely mobile during engagements. I won't lie and say that these finishers are super seamless, but most of them are animated at a very high quality, and overall, these changes add a lot of options for melee combat, as well as making it a lot more satisfying to pull off. Also, Sue's firearm-enabled self-factory reset has been tuned to factor these in. The RAM cost is prohibitively high, but as you do more finishers, you can lower the morale of an enemy enough to give them 13 reasons why for like 3 gigs of dedicated wham. While we're on the topic of combat, and I can't believe I'm saying this, they reworked healing completely. Now, your healing item of choice is an infinite resource that's on a cooldown, meaning you can spam it for a little bit, but then you might be screwed over when the fight finally catches up with you. This also applies to grenades. It's such a massive change and really helps to make the healing from finishers a lot more appealing. Finishers can hurt your positioning though, so it's important to pick off isolated targets or disable nearby enemies with hacking. And look where we are now. We're not just spamming attacks, we're making choices. Another choice everyone playing this DLC had to make was whether or not to make a new character, and taking inspiration from their own game, Phantom Liberty allows you to start out with a level 15 character who's already equipped for the DLC. I don't know if this is intended as a skip prologue button, but that's what I'm using it for. The character comes with preset leveling and gear, but you do get a one-time attribute reset if you want it. This also applies to old saves, so they kind of gave me what I want, but not really. Like I said before, I'd prefer this was available for a cost, but I guess I'll take what I can get. And guess what? The mod's already updated and fully functional. Now, onto driving.
He did the same joke.
Driving feels a little different, I guess, but overall it's mostly the same. But what's missing in terms of amazing driving gameplay was made up for with a fantastic connection of driving gameplay and the rest of the gameplay. You can get a cheap perk that allows sliding and jumping for moving vehicles, and you can shoot enemies from inside them as well. Quick side note, they didn't change sliding, but you can extend it with a perk and it helps a bit. Cars can be hacked, but you'll need to focus on being a net runner because it's expensive otherwise. But what's the point of gunplay in cars if no one else can use them?
Okay, we'll still send a code 3.
What you gonna do when NCPD comes for you? I'm not gonna lie, it's nothing amazing. Cops can now detect and chase you, and as you kill them, you get more stars. Whoop-de-doo. At higher star levels, they'll send max tech after you, which is pretty cool. This game needed easily accessible infinite combat arenas, and if you want to fulfill your dream of being the cyber psycho from the first episode of the anime, now you can. This change is good and cool, but man, 3 years? GTA 3 had this, man. On the other hand, the quality of life changes in this update are common and fantastic. Individual skills can be refunded at any time, and I already mentioned how attributes work. Cars are now purchased through a car shop terminal instead of being stored as quests in 80 different locations. And this could be a placebo, but it feels like they tightened the air takedown range and it no longer requires a skill point investment. Unfortunately, they didn't touch the animation, same thing with neck breaks. Speaking of skill points, you can now find shards on enemies and in containers that increase skills and cyberware capacity. We'll get to that. And normally that loot will be stored in one location in an area as opposed to being scattered all over the place. I'm not sure how much of this was influenced by my character reaching level 40 or so and how much was due to the loot pool changing, but I feel like I was looting tier 4 items constantly. Oh right, the tiers. Man, there's a lot to talk about. The previous gacha leveled loot system is gone and replaced with a simpler tier system, along with more understandable upgrades for weapons and gear. Along with that, clothes don't have much effect for the most part anymore, leaving armor to cyberware, which has also been reworked. Instead of just having limited slots, you also have a max cyberware capacity, so if you want to chrome out, you'll need to invest in your technical ability. This tree is mainly focused on cyberware, and with a perk, after upgrading, you can even roll for different stat increases. Okay, that was all about the 2.0 update. Let's actually get into the DLC. Dogtown is an interesting area for sure, but I do get 10 to 20 FPS less there than I do in Night City, so if you struggle to run this game, it might be worth skipping. Most of the actual missions take place indoors though, so it's not the biggest deal ever. In terms of gameplay, it's more of what you expect from Cyberpunk. Mainly combat and stealth arenas or dialogue. There were only a few set pieces that involve gameplay that wasn't in the base game, and they aren't particularly interesting. I really expected the driving combat to show up at some point, but I don't think it ever did in the entire story. There's a new type of side mission involving stealing cars, and as far as I'm aware, that's the only implementation of the driving combat besides fighting cops. I won't spoil the story, but there were definitely some great moments involving Johnny.
I am in your shoes, dumbass.
And surprisingly enough, even with Idris Elba involved, I think Songbird's acting actually stole the show. Overall, the DLC itself fits well into the main game's story, except for when I got to the normal game's ending. And the DLC ending wasn't implemented as part of it, so two Johnnies asked me different questions in the same location at the same time. There's really only 2 quests that involve doing spy stuff, but they were both very memorable because of that, and the DLC definitely accomplished its goal of making me feel paranoid around specific characters. And I must say, there weren't any crazy betrayals out of left field that didn't make sense with the characters' motivations. The plot's mostly just fine, but the characters are interesting, which is where this game tends to shine. In terms of endings, I completed 2 and watched the rest on YouTube, and they're distinct enough from the main game story's endings to be worthwhile, and they're not objectively superior in a way that would invalidate the endings from the normal game. This DLC was pretty average in my opinion, so if you're strapped for cash, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you just want more Cyberpunk, that's what you get. Regardless, the 2.0 update is a complete success in my opinion, and if you were at all interested in Cyberpunk before, now is definitely the time to jump in. Oh, I forgot to mention, you can play the cool first equip animation whenever you want now, without a mod. Oh, and while we're talking about mods, the Lucross VR mod for Phantom Liberty finally got updated, and I decided to finally give it a shot. Playing it on quests definitely hurt the experience in terms of visual fidelity, but the openness of the world and the detail in the setting led to a super immersive, if not a bit smeary experience. If you want to do the same, but with a plebeian headset like mine, I have some cool products to help with that from this video's sponsor, PrismXR. I have been paid to give my opinion on these products, but I made it extremely clear that I have to be given the ability to give my negative thoughts as well as my positive ones. The PrismXR is intended to be a direct connection via a small router from your headset to your PC. I run a Quest 2, so this product actually had me pretty excited. When testing it in games using virtual desktop, it dropped my latency from the 70s and 80s down to the 50s and 60s. In my opinion, this is a fairly critical range of latency in terms of impact on gaming, and it was a definite improvement over my normal router. I might not use this for competitive games or games that artificially add latency like Blade and Sorcery or Ghost of Tabor, but I'll definitely be using it for single player games from now on. It still wasn't comparable to Wired in my opinion, but for $80 on Amazon, if you have a busy home router or you want the best PC VR wireless experience you can get on a Quest, definitely consider giving this a shot. I initially had issues with it disconnecting, but I realized that was due to me plugging a cable in wrong, so if you pick it up, follow the directions. Next up is the Carina W1, a 10,000 mAh wearable battery pack designed for VR. Obviously, you can use most battery packs with VR, but you need one that can charge fast enough that you can still play while charging, and trying to strap them onto the headset can be difficult in most circumstances. The Carina has a series of straps and can be worn like a satchel or belt, and I can personally verify that it can charge a headset all the way from dead with half a charge. And with the amount of times my headsets died while I'm playing a game, I can personally say this has saved me a play session that I would have had to end early otherwise. The product that I was sent that most affected my play experience was surprisingly the Vega headphones. I won't lie and say they're the best headphones I've ever used. They're a bit bassy for my taste, but what they do have is low latency. They come with a dongle that attaches to your headset, and they can also be used with Bluetooth. This means you can use them in your day-to-day and simply disconnect your phone and immediately start receiving audio from your Quest 2. I hadn't fully realized how poor the audio experience was on Quest until I used these headphones and got a significantly more immersive experience. I complained about the bassiness earlier, but it works well in games with a lot of gunfire, and it's significantly better than the vibrating sensation I would get on my temples using the Quest speakers. If any of these products interested you, you can check them out in the description. Thank you for your time. Thank you to my channel members. Here's what I spent your money on. Have fun, be safe, and as always, subscribe to my fucking YouTube